Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
I'm Susan Kaufman. I'm here to welcome you to Attitude's ADHD Experts broadcast. We have heard repeatedly from Attitude readers that their children's executive function problems and deficits mean that many of them routinely forget to write down homework assignments. They lose important papers in can be a bottomless backpack, and they're overwhelmed by school projects that have long timelines. Some of the smartest and most creative kids need help learning how to get and how to stay organized in the face of these kinds of executive function problems. So today we're super pleased to welcome longtime professional organizer Susan Lasky to just advise us on setting up school organization systems that actually work. She'll be talking about topics such as how to narrow the many options for tracking assignments, managing papers, handing in homework to the ones that are right for your family, how to maintain those systems, and how to set up schedules that work for your family over the months ahead and not just to the week that you set them up. Susan Lasky's MA has been helping families and students get things done, basically using strategies that work with the way people actually think since 1991. She is a co-founder of CHAD New York City, and her degrees are numerous. Some of them are Senior Certified ADHD Coach, Level 2 Specialist in Chronic Disorganization, and she is a Golden Circle member of the National Association of Professional Organizers. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd also like to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's webinar, the very extremely invaluable Time Timer. It's the award-winning visual timer used by parents and educators around the world to actually show what it looks like as time is passing. The Time Timer is the winner also of many awards, the Teacher's Choice Award for the Family, and recently named the 2016 Best Residential Organizing Product Award. So please visit timetimer.com to see their entire list of unique timers. I can't think of anything that would help kids, adults, and everyone stay on track better than a time timer. So with that and our thanks, let me turn this over to Susan.
Okay. Well, thank you, Susan. One of the things when people talk about organization, they have this perception that is not necessarily what it really means. Organization is about quality of life. It's about the ease of getting things done. When you are trying to set up an organizational system or doing something with organization, it's not about having all of your ducks in a row. It's not about having a neat desk. It is about having systems that work with the way a person thinks. And we all know that people with ADD and executive function issues don't necessarily think the same way that neurotypical people might, and so it's even more critical to look towards what will work for them. So that's part of what we're going to be looking at today. What is a system that works? It may appear illogical to someone else, but it must be simple and easy to use. The simpler it is, the more likely it will be used and maintained. On the other hand, it should also be appealing or interesting, and if possible, even fun. It must have your students' buy-in. A lot of times people try to organize their students, and the students don't have a clue what they're really talking about. Or the organization works for the parent, but it doesn't necessarily work for the student, and I'll talk more about that. We all know that executive function issues are a major component of the ADD challenges. So we may know something intellectually, but we're much more likely to take action when there's a positive emotional component. You all meet up with resistance. And even students who are really interested in doing something, they meet their own levels of resistance. So one of the critical things to try to work with is how to change the have-tos and the must-dos into want-tos. How to make something that they have to do easier to do and something they actually want to work on. I've worked with a lot of students who put off homework, and what's happening is it's a pressure. It's always a pressure that's there, and they know they ultimately have to deal with it, but it's the activation that is so challenging. Sometimes when they realize that and really accept the fact that they have to do it, it changes to a want to. They want to get it over, and you could help them figure out the best way to do that. But once they want to, that shift in thinking makes the whole process so much easier than fighting it all the way. Okay, so I talked earlier about having the buy-in of your student. What that means is they have to be a part of the process if it's really going to work. It's the difference between being told something and finding it out on your own where you own it instead of just hear it. You can teach, you could suggest, you could inspire, but give them the opportunity to problem solve. And it is absolutely amazing how creative a student becomes when they have a say in the outcome. And this applies to young students also. It's not just your older ones. And even if what they come up with isn't ideal or you don't go with it, they're learning critical thinking skills. They're learning self-regulation, that if there's something that's a problem, you work with it instead of running away from it. And also, it gives them the opportunity to learn that they should look for problems, because you can't fix something that isn't broken. And the more you fix a problem, the less you're struggling with it. So it becomes an opportunity and almost a fun thing, which is why I talk about being a detective, that they get involved with this and it actually is a spark of energy. So setting up systems, which we'll talk about, is only the beginning. The reality is systems are going to fail without maintenance, and maintenance is going to fail without routines. Routines require commitment and time. So organization and time management, you can't have one without the other. Or you can, but they're not going to work really well. So when you're setting up any kind of a system, build in maintenance. Those are the two ends of organization. Routines rule. Structure and consistency makes a difference. Establish routines for a more organized, less stressful year. It almost pains me to say that, because as an adult who has ADD, I have always struggled with the idea of routines and consistency. But I do know that when you have them, it makes a difference. It's no longer a case of indecisiveness or what should I do or I don't want to do it. If it's clear cut, ITTT, if this, then that. If it's 8 o'clock, I need to be brushing my teeth. If it's 3:30, I need to be working on my homework plan. And having systems, having structure, having routine takes away a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress, and a lot of the arguments. And one of the jobs that we have as parents, which for some of us is very challenging, is to help our child maintain a routine and also learn that there are times when you have to deviate from a routine, but that doesn't mean you abandon it. So if on certain days they have activities or in an evening something comes up, you deal with it. But you go back to having the basic routine. Now, when creating the routine, discuss the acceptable options and then let your child choose. Give them as much autonomy as possible so you get that higher level of buy-in. So do you prefer 45 minutes of unwind time before you start your homework or after you start your homework? And it's interesting that it works differently for different children. Some are much better off getting the homework out of the way, and others really, really need time to reconstitute after a day at school. They need to pull themselves together. So this is something to discuss with them, but you should have routines for various times of the day. Morning and leaving for school, afternoon and homework. Homework may go into the evening at times. Dinner, after dinner, bedtime, and also weekend school and prep planning. Part of the problem is with everyone is that not enough planning goes into doing action. And studies have shown for every minute of planning, you could save 20 to 40 minutes of actual work. So instead of going off, very eager but not having a plan of action, it helps to plan things out. And taking some time on the weekend is often helpful if they're working on projects, or even if it's figuring out what activities are going to happen during the week. Conversations disappear, so keep them visible. You could have the greatest conversation and everyone buys in and everyone's in agreement and it sounds great, and 5 days later everyone forgot exactly what did we say. Label the routines and write out the steps. Even have the student initial the page, which is, again, their buy-in, and create a printed version to post where it will be seen, even in more than one place, if that will be helpful. Putting it on a bulletin board that is in an area that is hardly looked at or is so cluttered with other things it isn't going to make a difference, it becomes wallpaper. So you want to put the printed version where the actual activities will take place or where the person will be when they need to begin doing those activities. And then if a routine isn't working, brainstorm why not. Again, this is where you get your junior detective to figure out acceptable alternatives, which helps to find a good solution, also helps with the critical thinking that's going to be so important in all aspects of life. And I love this little photo here. I can't do it cutting out the T and just leaving I can. A lot of behaviors are learned behaviors. I haven't been able to do this. I'm no good at that. I can't do that. And how true is that? Because you could always give examples of times when that isn't the case. So if you help them to see that it's not always the case, that they do have a choice in the matter, they will be more likely to give things a try. Okay, now we'll get into some specifics, and then if there are questions later, I could go more into some of the executive function questions. Taking control of the binder and the bottomless backpack. You want to organize contents for easy access, but again, you need to do it with your students' permission and active involvement, because if it's done without that, it's going to be something that they'll avoid because it has no bearing on their reality. Start by discussing the real goal. A lot of times people think it's neatness for neatness sake, and especially kids, they don't get the benefit of it. So it's really helpful to have them understand that it's not just about having it neat, which is extra work that who cares, but it's to make it quicker, easier to find stuff. It helps them so they don't have to carry more than what's absolutely necessary. They have fewer hassles with forgetting stuff, and they spend less mental energy having to remember things. And I think if you thought about this list, or your child did, they'd add a bunch of other things to it, why it helps to make an effort to keep things in order. Okay, understanding organization 101. Principle number 1, group like with like. and that's deciding on categories. And that has to do with any form of organization for you adults out there as well as for the kids, that it's important to keep similar things together. Principle number 2, everything needs a home where you can find it. If the home is in the wrong place, they're not going to look for it. If it's too small, things are going to get messy. If it's too big, things are going to get lost, and things that don't belong there are going to be added in. So you want to group like with like by function, not by how it looks, although there are some children who work best when things look alike, and that's how they function. And to find the proper home for all of the things that they'll need to make life easier. We'll start with the paperwork. Start with a home for notes and handouts, grouping papers for each subject by category. This is where you have your binder or subject notebooks. Everything should be labeled, and usually color-coded helps as well. Although there are a few children who find they want everything to look the same. But in general, color coding helps, especially when you try one notebook out of a backpack. Separate sections if you're using a binder with oversized pocket dividers that can also hold loose papers. I say oversized because that way the tab that says what's in there sticks out. And if they want to have sub-tabs, you could use regular size pocket dividers or dividers within a section. So they may have a section for, in a subject, they may have a section for notes, a section for exam prep or anything else. And if it works for them, they could have subdividers that make it easy to access and see just what they're looking for. Use clear plastic sleeves for critical reference materials. All the time, they will have certain sheets that are really important. It could be administrative information, but often it's things like the most important formulas in the science class or in a math class, or grammatical rules in an English class. And the easier it is to access them, the more they'll be used. So put them in a clear plastic 3-hole punch sleeve if it's in a binder, or if it's in a subject notebook, have it separately. You could even attach a sleeve to the front of the book or the inside cover. But recognize it as important. Always the homework issue becomes a major one. The transfer system. Either they didn't take the homework home, or they took it home and didn't do it, or they took it home and they did it, but they forgot to bring it back, or they brought it back, but they forgot to hand it in. I'm sure many of you relate to that. So decide on, again, you need a home for the homework. And it could be a separate double pocket folder, a translucent one that shows there's papers inside, like the one in the illustration. Or if they're using a binder, they might prefer to have a 3-hole pocket folder right in the front of the binder, which is labeled with the homework. Or some children, we'll discuss it further on, use an accordion file, and the first 2 sections could be for homework to take home and stuff to bring back. Again, labeling is critical. Handwriting doesn't help when you want to see things at a glance. It's much more efficient to see it like this. Now, if you look at the example, I have take me home and hand me in all on the outside. If the information was on the inside, it wouldn't stick out as much. Now, they can have on the inside one folder with take me home, and one side, the left side could say take me home, the right side could be hand me in, but it should also be on the outside so that it really pops and they remember it and they see it. ask your student what they want to call it. Because a lot of times, my idea of what something should be called has nothing to do with my client's idea of what it should be called. Try to introduce the concept even of humor, because people are more likely to get attached to something if there's an element that makes them smile. An example of that would be where you always have folders that say urgent or priority, and after a while you kind of, it turn a blind eye to it. So one person had it called stay out of jail folder. And at least they looked at it. Or if you have schedules for all of your kids in a folder, again, it could get lost. So you add a little humor. Where in the world are Jane and Joey? And think of it that way, because going back to what I said earlier about the emotions, the more that you feel related to what you're doing, the more likely you are to use it and maintain it. You could also use this homework transfer system for notices that you need to see and forms that need to be returned to school. Go over to the Taming the Backpack book bag. Decide on a specific location for the contents. That includes notebooks and binders, planner or calendar, lunch money, bus pass keys, sticky notes, textbooks, etc. You will see that sticking out of this backpack are colored items. A lot of times people may have a dark colored bag, and then the easy open pouches I talk about for pens, pencils, and other tools is in a dark color. So they still have to go digging for it. The more colorful things are, or the more appealing they are, like some students like to put stickers on things, that's fine, because it helps them make that emotional attachment with it or relate to it better. Include an extra folder that you could that they could easily slip in miscellaneous papers. So that folder could be, called "Don't Bunch Me Up," because that's what happens when they just stick them in the backpack. And it should be very easy access, because the easier access things are, the more likely they will be used. The homework area. People ask all the time, where should I work? Or is it okay that they work at the table versus the desk? A lot of children, especially younger ones, are going to want to work, despite having a great desk in their room, at the dining room or kitchen table. That goes back to the concept of a body double, which is when there's another person there who may not be helping them with the homework or anything, but may be cooking. It's still the feeling that someone is there and who could occasionally say, what are you doing, and turn the person's attention to it. A body double helps with many activities. It helps with doing homework. It helps with doing an organizing routine. So that is something that should be considered. It's not dependency, because you're not going to be helping them all the time, but it's just knowing you're there makes them more comfortable. On the other hand, there's privacy, and as children get older, they want more and more privacy. That also could be a problem, because then you don't know exactly what's going on. So you need to have check-ins to make you feel comfortable and give them autonomy. You want to have a portable homework supply container that contains all of the things they may possibly need: paper clips, stapler, scissors, Post-it, notepads or index cards, glue stick, highlighters, 3-hole punch. It should be in kind of a see-through but easy to carry toolkit or basket. So if they decide to work in their room, they have it. If they decide to work in the living room or the dining room, they could just carry that around and also carry it out, so their stuff doesn't stay around. You could include art supplies in them or have a separate container for art supplies. In their room should be a bin, file, or an accordion folder, or a magazine holder, and I'll show you examples in a minute, for work that doesn't need to be in the binder but may still be needed to study for tests. You can separate by subject in labeled file folders, But the idea is to get it out of the binder, get it out of the book bag. There should be a tray or a folder if they're working on a current project that generates a lot of paper. And they should have a countdown timer that shows the passage of time. I'm sure you've heard that digital timekeepers show exactly what time it is, but it doesn't provide any context of what the passage of time. An analog clock shows the passage of time because the hands go around. But a countdown timer and time timer, you create the best one, they show the passage of time. It also makes it great that if someone is avoiding doing something, you just turn the dial, and I'll show you a picture of it in a minute, so that it shows 10 minutes. And they could see the 10 minutes decreasing. And because they could see that they're only going to have to do it for a short time, it's a greater impetus to get going and start it. And that could be helpful in many ways. Another thing to consider is good task lighting and not fluorescent overheads, which some people have a reaction to. I personally find a natural daylight lamp really helps me to feel more alert, aware, and ready to do things. I have also found I shouldn't use it at night because it will keep me up longer. Okay, some of the organizers' best friends. I talked about labeling. Labeling is critical. Get a good handheld labeler. I love the Brother P-Touch ones, and they come with different size widths. So if you want to have bigger labels for a bin or toy storage or anything, you might want to get one that does up to 3/4 or 1 inch, as opposed to just the 1/2 inch high. To the right of that you could see there are some color-coded binders and those magazine holders that have separated the papers. So it's really clear that if science is in blue, then blue is where you keep all of the papers for science. So you don't have to think about it. It's easy to find it. Clear containers are very helpful. You could see the content of them. So anything that needs storage should be in containers that are easy to access and have big labels that say exactly what's in them. And everyone needs a planner calendar for tracking projects, tasks, and appointments. The time timer, that is on the upper left. It comes in different versions. There's even an online and a watch version of it. And you just set it for how much time you want to be working, and it will count down that time. Underneath that is a Pendaflex hanging file, and that also you could gather it all together and it wraps up and it ties. So again, using color coding, it makes it very easy to find things. To the right of that is an accordion file. Some students find that the easiest thing because they don't have to 3-hole punch. They don't have to deal with anything, and it's very easy to just keep the papers they need in it. Above that is a work area where people with ADD are often out of sight, out of mind. And that's why file by pile is so common. So having all of that, those items visually there, but each one has a home, makes it easier to keep them. On the upper right, those are clear plastic project folders, and they're very helpful for keeping miscellaneous items. They come with tabs or without tabs. They come in clear, but it helps to separate groups of things within a larger category. And there's the natural sunlight lamp that I talked about earlier. Okay. Now, I'm going to speed through routines to maintain the systems. We talked about having daily routines for different things, but this is different. These are specific routines, the time management part of the organization. So daily, determine a time and a place where you're going to empty the bag of homework notices, the folder for that, of the planner, of miscellaneous papers folder, and any items that are necessary for that day's homework. Again, having the routine of when and where is important. Daily, determine a time that you check that everything's been returned to the bag, including completed homework. And to put the bag where it will be seen but not forgotten in the morning. Add other items that need to go to school with it for projects, sports, music. In general, it's best not to leave things for the morning. Many kids with ADD have difficulty getting up and becoming alert, so the less that they have to remember to do in the morning, the easier it is for them to get off to school. Again, remember to post these detailed routines. It needs to have continual reinforcement and to check in with how it's going. Weekly, set a time, maybe Sunday night, to go through the backpack, the binder, especially the divider pockets, and weed out anything that doesn't belong and make sure everything that does belong is in the bag, and you could even have a list to refresh supplies. Do the same with the desk or other work areas. Put papers that are no longer needed but should be saved for test review into a separate, clearly labeled filing system. We talked about that, hanging folders, accordion file, desktop magazine holders. Now, this is important here. When you're doing this, if you're doing this with your child, the idea is to focus on organizing, not critiquing. So as you clear the backpack, you're going to see things that you wish you hadn't. So ignore as much as possible the academic aspects of graded or messy papers and the junk like food wrappers. It doesn't mean that if you find out something academically that needs exploration or needs commentary, you're not going to bring it up. But the time to bring it up isn't when you're doing the organizing, because then they'll want to avoid doing the organizing because they don't want to get in trouble and they don't want you to comment. So make it as pleasant as possible and just make a mental reminder, why did you get a C- on that? And discuss it another time. Anticipate and prepare. That's for everything, that if you anticipate what might go wrong, you're prepared, so things are less likely to go wrong, and when they do, you're able to deal with it. Have a launch pad. Assign a standard spot near the door to keep the backpack, sports equipment, and after-school items. Post a checklist as a reminder of what to take that might not already be in the bag, like lunch money, permission slips, water bottle, musical instruments. Again, have the checklist where it is that they'll see it when they're leaving. Take a photo of the bag and the binder, and you could even do that, have them do it with a neat locker. That shows how they should look when ideally organized, because memory fades quickly. And also, when they're doing their organization, you could have them work from the photo and then check in with you to see if everything is done and give them that autonomy. If you don't have a separate set of books for home, which is a common accommodation, by the way, create reminders to bring the books home and also to return them. Do the same for library books. Put it on the calendar. Again, many times children get in trouble because they didn't return a book to school or they didn't bring it home, and so they couldn't do the homework. So they say. Organization time. Take control. Success breeds success. First of all, it's really important to understand and that your student understands the difference between a task and a project. A task is something you could easily do at one sitting. A project involves different tasks. The problem is they're often lumped together. And when you start thinking about a project, you could get overwhelmed. How do I do this? Even clean your room is a project, and it overwhelms some people. The problem with people who have ADD is when they get overwhelmed, that amygdala triumphs over the rational frontal lobes. Your executive functioning shuts down, and you have avoidance and frustration. Instead of getting to work, you tune out. The way to avoid that is by breaking the projects down into tasks. And you could even help them develop a simple project form with the name of the goal at the top, and then a list of the tasks and how long they might take, so that they could begin doing realistic planning. An example, study chapters 2 to 4 today and 5 to 6 tomorrow for Thursday's test, so that you're not doing it all the night before. Or for the essay that's due on Friday, tonight do a mind map or an outline, tomorrow a sloppy copy, and then do the editing on Thursday so that you have no problem delivering on Friday. Instead of looking at 20 arithmetic problems, which could be very overwhelming, fold the papers so only the first 8 or even 4 problems are visible. It makes it easier whenever you do anything that will avoid overwhelm kicking in. Use a planner. Even if a calendar app is used, and many children do use it, even if you use it for important dates, and even if homework is posted online, it still helps to visually see when you're already busy. So you could create a realistic timeline from when a project is due or a test is scheduled by working backwards to designate specific times for specific tasks. Now, if the student were to take the breakdown that we did before and put it on the calendar for each day, they would see that, oh my gosh, on Wednesday night, I have I have something at school, and then I have my swim team. I'm not going to have time to even do homework on Wednesday night. Well, then you better double up on Tuesday and Thursday. But if you don't have that written and blocked off on the planner, then you're not likely to incorporate that into your thinking about how much time you actually have. So on the left, there's an academic planner from Order Out of Chaos, and you'll see that down the left-hand column, you could put in all the classes, but you also have room to put the after school. And again, I notice both of these planners are full day spreads, because that way you could do a timeline to track activities for the week. The planner on the right is from plannerpads.com, and it is wonderful. The top helps you to do things by category. What are the things I need to do in these areas? The middle part helps you to prioritize, and then the bottom, you actually schedule. A lot of my older clients use that. A lot of the younger clients use the academic planner. Get help if you need it. If your frustration level is causing major stress, if you stop being mom or dad and you've become a warden, if you want to help but you aren't sure how, there are people who could help you. Homework helpers. The student next door could come in and basically sit with your child, help them with basic things, and be a body double. If it's more technical, then they need a tutor. You could help them with organization and time management skills by getting an ADD coach. Find one who will work with someone your child's age, whether it's younger or college. ADHD parenting coaches. They could be of great help to giving you support. And then there are the professional organizers. When you look for one who specializes in working with ADHD and or students. And then there are therapists and social workers who specialize in this area. Again, sometimes your child needs support, but sometimes it's you who should have the support, and you could do more for your child when you have it. Briefly, technology for good. There's so much about technology for bad, including please don't keep those electronic devices in the bedroom at night, not only from a blue light perspective, but from a temptation one. There's assistive technology, speech to text, which could be software on computers, tablets, and phones like Dragon Naturally Speaking, or there's iListen, which is Mac Speech. Note-taking, a live scribe pen, which you take notes and then you click on it if you need to record something, and it gives you like where you were so you don't have to listen to the whole lesson again. And there are plenty of audio recording devices and apps. An accommodation is to allow things to be recorded. And then visual, changing the color schemes and font display. Also, automatically switch the display to evening colors to kind of wind down. That bright blue of most screens is very counterproductive for sleep. There's a program called Flux that automatically shifts it, knows your time zone, to more of an orangey background, which is more restful. Okay, there are plenty of software and apps. I'm not going to go into them now, but you could use them to increase self-awareness. They give alerts as to the passage of time. They improve concentration and focus. They'll monitor exercise, diet, and sleep. They'll even track medication. They may regulate online usage by blocking social media sites or limiting web surfing, tracking computer time, and blocking distractions. Organizing information, programs like Evernote, doing mind mapping, list managers. Software could be a great aid. However, it could also be a great interference. So if you're going to try out a software, try out one at a time. And if it's not the one you really want, take it off of the devices, because devices are full of apps that people do not use, and it just causes clutter, confusion. And the more you have, the less likely you are to use anything.
Oh, thank you, Susan. That was great. Before we start the questions, I just had one. You mentioned two types of planners, and you named the brands, but a number of people missed what you said. I think one was order.
I see there's a link on here, and there are links on that site to the planners.
To SusanLasky.com/resources.
Yeah, one is from Order Out of Chaos, and the other is Planet Pads. But they're actual plannerpads.com.
Plannerpads.com. Okay, thanks. Just wanted to get that.
I think it's without the S. I'm not sure. Maybe
Planet. Okay, we'll look it up.
But again, there are pictures of them with links on the site if you don't want to remember the URL.
The suggestions you gave have been absolutely great. I think a lot of the questions are from parents who are not sure how to implement this. In some cases, they have a child who's older, and it's maybe late to sort of have them go through their homework assignments every night. They're used to not doing that. I guess my question to you is, how does this play out over the years? What do you start out with in elementary school so that you get these habits started? And how do you, as you go into high school, how do you make a transition with kids who are used to being independent?
Okay, the most important thing is to have them understand that this isn't painful. It's meant to make it easier, and that they shouldn't have to struggle. And the more they get involved, which is why I kept talking about get their buy-in, get them to be a detective. And how do you get them involved? You get them involved when it's self-serving, when they see a benefit in doing something. And the only way someone's going to see a benefit in doing something is if they've seen the problem when they don't do it. So sometimes failure is the best motivation for changing a system around. As they get older, they don't like being told what to do. So that's why it's more important to work with them to help them decide what they should do and then offer suggestions. But sometimes you need to step back because there's already a negative interaction that's going on and they're not going to listen to you. It's like I could talk to someone's child and they'll listen to me, but that doesn't mean my child listened to me. Just, that's the reality of it. But the most important thing here is to have them realize that this is beneficial for them. And now you talk about as they get older, they want more autonomy. They don't want to be bothered with this. So you have something called an elastic contract. An elastic contract could be used for anything, and it is absolutely wonderful with teens. They want something, like they want to stay out till 10 instead of 9. Well, they want to stay out till 11 instead of 9. And the elastic contract is, okay, if you get everything done and you return exactly at 11, at 10, because you're not ready to shift to 11, you could stay out till 10. But if I find that you're not getting things done, then we go back to 9 and I don't get any voice from you because you agreed to do it at 10. And this works with a lot of things where they don't want you looking over their shoulder or something like that, that they get a benefit if they work independently. So it's an inducement to do that. But at the same time, you maintain control because you're checking in and the checking in is agreed to. And if they're not doing what they said, they lose the benefit. So that's a helpful approach.
Okay. Children starting out, one person said, my son's 6 with ADHD. He's going to have to repeat first grade. I need help getting him started with organizing routines and homework time. What would you suggest at the first, second, third grade level? How would you get started?
First of all, they need to see things visually. Just talking about it isn't enough. So if you draw a pictograph of this is your day, and here you are in school, and this is when we eat dinner, and you have this much time, what are the things you want to do with your free time? And they'll tell you some. Okay. And how much homework do you usually have? And you would have an idea of that already. So when should we put that in so you'll have time to do the other things? So they see it in the context of freedom instead of feeling that it's all work and no play. And then the fact is they see it, because if they just hear it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Does that help, or should I go further on it?
I think even further. I mean, in a first or a 5, 6, or 7-year-old, first, second, third grade, would you have a set homework time? Would you have a planner? How involved would parents be? Some sort of specifics about how you would start out.
I would definitely have a set time to do things. The planner is a little iffy because of handwriting issues start becoming more of a problem, so you may have to help them with the planning. But the study after study shows structure and consistency are so helpful to our kids. Right. And the more we provide it, the less anxiety they have, actually. It's like if you know what a rule is and the rule can't be broken, then you're not going to put up such a fuss about it every single time. And too often, we give in to our kids, and I'm not saying that to critically. I know I did. But if there are certain things that they learn those are the givens and that's how it has to be done, then the earlier they learn it, the better off they actually are. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't have some autonomy even then. As much as possible, give them choices within the desired action so that they feel that sense of buying in, even at 6 or 7. That you're not just telling them what to do, you're helping them figure out the best way of doing it. Kids, even young kids, may not pay attention to a lot of this stuff, but they're not stupid. They start seeing what it does and how it works. And the trick here, too, is to have natural consequences so that when it isn't done, they see that there's a problem if they don't do it, as much as there's a reward if they do it. And that's another thing. You could set up a reward system to encourage them to participate and get them to start looking forward to doing some of these routines and habits. There are all sorts of reward systems, and you could have different ones for following different routines at different periods of the day. And the more you have that, if the reward is the right one, if it's immediate enough, then that helps them feel, and it also adds to the concept of it being a game and being a detective, which adds to the fun of it and the humor and the buy-in, the emotional buy-in to change.
Okay. So some of the keys here then, if I hear this, are using a planner and a schedule, a regular routine for doing homework. Some of the questions that have come up are, my son receives a planner at the school year, but he has a hard time putting things down. How can we get him to do that, and how much engagement should I have as a parent in managing the planner?
That's a really, really hard one. And honestly, my heart goes out to kids who have to write all this stuff down, especially a lot of kids with ADD have graphomotor issues. Their handwriting is horrendous, and they get the assignment at the end, so they're rushing to write down the assignment when they have to rush to go to another class. It's not conducive to good practice. So if possible, maybe they could take a photograph of the assignment.
So interesting you say that, because several parents have just posted that their children do well when they take a photograph. Tracy says, my son takes a picture of his daily homework, but he doesn't think of it until the night before. But that's a good point. But then not pasting it into a planner or not using a planner, I guess, in that case.
Well, the planner has to become a habit, and it only becomes a habit if you see the benefit of using it. So initially, you need to work with them and, tell them that this is something that you're both working together to figure out and see how helpful it could be. Mm-hmm. If they're just putting homework in the planner for each day, then then they'll say, I could just read my homework, and they can. The idea of the planner is, wherever possible, to spread out the homework, to see how little free time they actually have by putting in their other things, whether it's swim team or music lessons, so that they get an idea of the passage of time reality of how much they have and what the trade-off is of sleep versus getting homework done, or not handing in a homework and having to do it on a weekend.
Right. Okay. So for those parents who are posting, and there are a number of them, that their child simply, in many cases, high school students, does not want to share assignments with them, misses handing things in, doesn't want to be managed, so forth. Is this where your advice about an ADHD coach, an outsider, someone else to step in? Is that in those situations?
Definitely that helps. However,
Okay.
You could first try approaching it from a different perspective, which is to help them explain you're not trying to take over, you're trying to make it easier, and you have some techniques, and you bet they do too. So let's discuss what they may be. And the time to bring it up isn't during a crisis situation. It's maybe when you're in the car having a comfortable drive together, or you're taking a walk and you start brainstorming, how could this be done? What would make this easier for you? Again, emphasizing easier for you, not you better get better grades.
Right.
Then the elastic contract comes into play, which is, well, you got these grades this semester. You're saying that you're doing all this to get better grades. We'll give you the opportunity to show that to us on the first marking period. But if things aren't improving, then we're going to step in. Are you in agreement with that? And they're going to agree with that because they don't want you to step in at that point.
Yeah,
they want you to back off. So you're giving them a grace period to get it together, and you may even remind them periodically that the agreement is that they're going to be very closely monitored if they don't handle it appropriately.
Okay. Couple of comments here coming in. Leslie says they have a big whiteboard in the kitchen where they write all non-school activities each week, and then they add school assignments each week as they get, so everyone can see on the days that they're visually see, I guess, in the center of the household what's going on. Seems like a good thing to start early, and then by the time high school rebellion comes, maybe it's already a habit.
Definitely, it helps to start that early. But again, it can't just be what the assignment is. There has to be the task breakdown because the
Right.
assignment could be due at the end of the week, but they need to have time during the week to work on it.
Right, exactly. Yep. Some very specific and interesting questions. My child writes his assignment down in the planner, but forgets to bring home the associated book so that he can do the assignment. How can I get him to make the link between the assignment in the planner and the books he needs in order to do those?
That's a good point, and it may help to have some kind of reminder system in the planner that, if this is for math, then you need to bring the math book home with a sticky note, bring math book home, because that's the point of observation, that you want them to catch it. We can't depend on memory for anything.
Right. So I think we're almost out of time, which is because people are really appreciative of your suggestions. And in fact, their requests here: do you have a presentation like this for teachers? And do you have a presentation like this for adults? There's two of the questions that have come in. So we might have to schedule another webinar with you if you're available in a few months to address
Absolutely. I'm laughing at the issues about the adults, because almost everything in here applies to adults with ADHD as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Carrie says, can you do a webinar like this but for adults? My job has unstructured tasks every day, and I have a hard time making use of my time. So yeah, I think these techniques apply across the board. Thank you, everyone. And Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it.
Susan's presentation has just chock full of great resources. Again, you will find it on the website, attitudemag.com/webinars. You can also go to susanlasky.com/resources and find even more. And so please take advantage of those resources, download and consider, and let us know what we can do to help. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.